Okay, so time for pride time. And so I will tell a story of some kind of crushy, coming of agey, awkwardy thing. So I'll just say it and we'll see, okay? I'll tell you the story. So I remember my first day at school, actually. I remember my first day at school and the last class of the day. We were all very tired because it was our first day of school and it was quite sunny. And the teacher was calling out the register and we didn't know anyone because it was a new school. We didn't know any of these people. And I remember she called out some boy's name and I misheard what his name was. And it made him sound like he had a very mythical sounding name. And I looked over to where he was, and the sun was coming in right across him and right into my eyes and everything as well. So I couldn't really see. So he was kind of cast in this kind of strange light. I couldn't really see him, and he had this mythical sounding name, you know. And then the next day, I had art class. That was my first lesson, art class, and they have these big, big wooden art tables for doing art on. And I went and sat down, and he was sat opposite me at this table. And so I told him, I said I thought your name was such and such because of the mythical sound to his name. And he immediately punched me on the arm for saying that. And then we were kind of friends all through school. So and I would sit next to him in science class as well. And he'd always bug me and like doodle in my book and stuff like that. And he'd always bug me like, when can I come to your house? Can I come to your house? I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit busy this week. I can't really. And then he'd be like, I don't want to come to your gay, smelly house anyway. And he'd always bug me about, like, a Zelda game. Twilight Princess was the game that was out around that time that I was at school, Twilight Princess. And he'd always bug me about that. Like, how do you get the thing? How do you get this? And how... because he always wanted my advice. And then he tried drawing, like, a map in my book or something because he'd try to explain it, but he wasn't very good at explaining things, so I didn't really know what he was talking about. But for me, I distinctly remember a thing with Zelda Twilight Princess. I didn't understand it at the time, but basically there's this scene where Link has to prove himself and he has to do some sumo wrestling. And because it's sumo wrestling, he takes his top off and he's proper buff and proper ripped and everything. Right, so I would play this game. So I'm playing this game and it's an adventure game, okay? It's a Zelda game, it's an adventure game, you solve puzzles and all that kind of thing, right? And then you have to fight this fat sumo man while Link has his top off and looks ripped, right? And I remember playing that part of the game and my inward feeling was that I hated it. My inward feeling was a feeling of awkwardness and I felt really hot for some reason. I felt like I was overheating. I didn't understand why I was overheating and I wanted to get that part of the game out of the way as quickly as possible. And on subsequent replays of the game as well, I was like, oh, I dreaded having to go through that bit because it made me feel hot. It made me feel uncomfortable and strange. It just goes to show, doesn't it? It just goes to show that we can have emotions that are really misinterpreting our physical sensation, doesn't it? Because I now understand what I was feeling about Link being buff. I now understand that and I'm all good for it now. But at the time, it was some kind of awkward, overheated, twisting thing. It just goes to show that we can apply that thinking to many of our physical sensations and many of our emotional difficulties. So there was always that with Link. So we went through school, and as school went on, I won't say we drifted apart necessarily, but the way in which we spent time together was lessened and different because we were growing up in different ways and we had different classes and things like that. It's funny how when you're at school at the time, school becomes your whole world, but it's easy for me now to look back on school and see how hastened and rushed it is as an institution, as a part of our society. It's very like stretching of taffy, if you know what I mean, because at the beginning of school, we were thrown together, him and me were thrown together, but then as school went on, we were kind of stretched apart, but we still had that understanding of being friends with each other, but you have different classes and different lessons and different things, and things change over time, you know? And at the time,
you don't necessarily notice it because it's all orbiting around you. So yeah, it wasn't just that it wasn't necessarily that we drifted apart, but we weren't necessarily as it was at the beginning anyway. We didn't like play together anymore and stuff like that. So I distinctly remember in my last year of school, and we were 16 by that point, we were like proper grown up, and we felt proper grown up by that point. And I even had a special English class. I was one of the top tier English students. There's only 5 of us in that class, and it was top tier. And that made us feel even more grown up. And I just had that class. I was having that special class where there's 5 of us. And I got a strange summons, and it said that I had to go and have lunch with the headmaster. It just came out of nowhere. Like, nobody told us that was a thing. So I got this summons, right? And I remember leaving my special English class, and it was a really bright, sunny day, and I was walking towards the reception area with my special English teacher, and I felt grown up, and I was talking to her about that I was going to go have lunch with the headmaster, and who knows where that came from, and she liked me anyway because we were in the special class and that kind of thing. And it was really, really sunny, and everyone was out, and everyone was playing. It was lunchtime, and I went round into the reception area with my slip for my lunch with the headmaster, and my friend was there waiting, and he was like, oh, and he had a slip as well, and it turned out that it was a paired thing. You went as a pair, it turned out. And so we had been selected to go together as a pair. So it was a bit of a surprise for us both, I suppose, but also a bit of a relief at the same time because we, we knew each other and we related to each other. So we went and had lunch with the headmaster, and it was really weird. It was such a strange thing. And again, that construction of what a school is, because on the one hand, we were feeling really grown up, right? But on the other hand, we kind of felt a little bit inwardly sad because our own lunches that we had prepared, that our mums prepared, they were sort of like going soggy in our lunch bag, do you know what I mean? And it's that kind of strange thing when you're growing up, isn't it? And here he was presenting us with very neatly cut sandwiches and very nicely presented cakes, and he kept saying, oh, you boys, you're too polite, you boys, he was saying, because we didn't. It's an interesting thing of crossing a threshold and something like that. And all of these emotions are all coming together at that age and at that time. And this is why I so distinctly remember all of this. And so we had lunch with him, and then we left having lunch with him, and we went out, and he was like, oh, you boys, you're too polite, and that sort of thing. And we went out of having lunch with the headmaster. And I don't even remember what he talked about, to be honest. I don't remember. The only thing I remember he said was that he said, I'm going to demolish the whole school and rebuild it in the opposite corner. What do you think of that? He said. So we left. And we went out of the reception, kind of in a stunned, kind of chatty, kind of what we doing thing. I went outside, and it was just tipping it down with rain. It was completely wet. Rain was pouring down, it was completely grey, and there was not a single person around because they'd gone into their lessons, right? And it was the weirdest thing. And normally in rain that heavy, you'd run, you'd run to your class, but we were in such a weird state of something, I don't know what, but we were in such a weird state of something that we didn't run, we walked really slowly, and I remembered that we turned to each other and we looked at each other, and we had nothing to say. We had no words. We were just in total silence. And I looked at him, and the rain was just dripping off of his hair and dripping off of his face, right? It was at that moment, I don't know what it was, but it felt like we'd gone to a completely different world, and I knew something then, okay? I don't know what it was that I knew. Well, I know what it was that I knew now, don't I? At the time, I didn't know, but I knew that I knew something, when I looked at him. And yeah, we were just silent. And then we went into the science building for our final lesson of the day. And it was all grey outside, and the light of the science building, and our shoes were squeaking on the floor. And we pushed open the door, and the teacher said, "Where have you two been?" Like we were in trouble or something. And we had to say, we're having lunch with the headmaster, of all things. So yeah, it was when I looked at him, and I just knew there was something there, but... Okay, that's my tale of wonder, okay? That's my tale of magic and wonder, so... I hope that you like that tale, and you should share your stories of me as well, because... it's the magical happy time of happy times. Well, thank you for listening.